concerning multinational enterprises and social policy. So it's an exact copy of the TOR's paragraph 5, which we already discussed on Tuesday, and it's just been put here so that the preamble so that the resolution is substantially the same as the TORs at the beginning.
Okay, I think it's okay. We can move to paragraph 6. Again, this is the same as the TORs. No changes in the last discussion, except for the Terakhir persons.
We did one further change since last night, and that is just changing the order of the words so that they're consistent every time they appear in the text. So the order is trafficking persons, forced labor, modern slavery, and labor exploitation. So that we just changed it so that that's the same order every time they come up in these documents.
Okay, except that, let's move to number 7.
Yeah, those are just changes for consistency of language.
Okay, move to number 8. It's quite long, but I think this is the same as the TOR. So,
There's been no substantial change to this paragraph since Tuesday. The only thing we've done again is to change human trafficking to trafficking persons. And on the left side, you'll see that we've changed the order of reference to ASEAN conventions so that they come in order of date of signatory, so 2017 and 2018. And we fixed some grammatical errors.
okay, move to 9. So this is a change that we paragraphs will reduce repetition.
Yeah, we just moved the paragraph up so that we're not repeating ourselves later. We didn't change the text, but we want to highlight that there was a change of order in paragraphing. And in this paragraph, we just acknowledge the transnational nature of trafficking and acknowledge that there is a gap. And then in the next paragraph,
Okay,
it looks quite bad, but it's again just changing of order of sentence. And it reads, we recognize that in Southeast Asia, there is a need for an integrated, holistic, human rights-based, action-led approach that specifically addresses the unique characteristics of trafficking persons for forced laborers of fishers and of workers in fishing and seafood industry. So it's the same text as before, we've just changed the order of the phrasing so that we're not repeating ourselves.
so we move to paragraph 11.
Yeah, just word change, word.
On the inputs on the consistencies. This was one of the input discussions. I think we can move to paragraph 12 now. Again, the same thing with the consistencies. Forced labor, labor exploitation, and self-agencies.
And we corrected a editorial error on the left side.
Paragraph 13.
No changes in that.
And we move to paragraph 14. Bring it up a little bit.
It's fine.
And paragraph 15.
The only change here we did was to change in October 2019 to by October 2019 to give us a little more flexibility on the timing. we know that there are some potential changes with elections coming, so we want to make sure that we have we have the flexibility to adjust to those changes.
Okay. And paragraph 17. Can you bring up to the full wording?
We haven't done 16.
Oh, 16. Okay, sorry. This is more plan.
So 16 just says that we resolved to convene as a working groups, which we discussed on Tuesday, and where we drafted terms of reference. There was also drafting a work plan, but because different groups were at different stages of drafting work plans, we've deleted the reference to the work plan, and we'll keep working on that. And the rest of the edits is just for clarity.
Okay, I think this is the number 17. There's a change in that.
No change. That's it. So that's
Okay.
the text of the resolution. If it's okay, if there are no objections, I would just finalize this text by accepting the highlights of the changes and do a final fix of any grammatical errors that might be lingering. Is that okay? Are there any objections to that?
Objections. 1, 2, 3. But okay, now we look into the TOR, the Sea Forum Officials. Yes.
Before I forget, I forgot to make this intervention before during the C188 discussion. I think our friends from Thailand mentioned their approval to ratify C188. I was thinking like, Brent, was it a good way to reflect somewhere in our resolution for Thailand? I think they deserve a credit for that.
Thank you, Basilio. On that one, I think what we could do, sorry to interrupt this, is because we just finished the conclusions of the other meeting, we thought after this is done, after you've completed this, we had the main closing conference, we would return back we would put up on the screen the conclusions that we adopted for the decent work workshop. And at that point, we want to include text that would include those conclusions. You could possibly include a reference to Thailand ratifying Convention 188. So we would visit that after.
Okay. Now we are continuing with the term of reference, Southeast Asian Forum to End Trafficking Person and Forced Labor Officers.
So again, the same process applies. We've highlighted any changes from the final Tuesday discussions on the right hand of the screen, and the left screen is the clean version. It might have a few minor editorial changes from things we picked up overnight, but where we have made changes, those are substantive changes, those are clearly marked on the right screen.
Okay, with the paragraph 1 of the preamble.
We added the final phrase just to emphasize what we're talking about in this preamble. We talk in this paragraph, and this paragraph is being agreed about fishing as a hazardous occupation and all of these things, and we just want to recognize that with fishers who are isolated at sea, they are more at risk of labor exploitation because of their isolation, working and living on vessel on board, and being away for extended periods.
Okay, move to paragraph 2. Okay.
So you may recall on Tuesday that one of the feedback from the International Organization Technical Advisor Group was that we needed a definition of migrant fishers and that we needed to make clear who we're talking about in the other sentences in this paragraph. We now have a definition of migrant fishers, which we will look at in a moment. And this paragraph is just making clear that once on board, fishers and migrant fishers face difficult conditions, and that migrant fishers are further vulnerable to particular risks, including trafficking persons, forced labor, modern slavery, and labor exploitation. We've now corrected that formula so that it's the same order as it is in the resolution.
See no objection, so we can move to paragraph 3. I think there is no change from the text, and now we go to the paragraph 4. Okay, this is input reference to SDGs.
Yeah, so this text actually comes from pre-existing text from the tripartite meeting on issues relating to migrant fishers from 2017. And this is just to hear in terms of sustainable development goals and to relate the efforts of the Sea Forum for Fishers to SDGs, particularly SDG 2 on zero hunger, SDG 8 on decent work and inclusive economic growth, in particular target 8.7, which is on the elimination of forced labor, human trafficking and modern slavery, SDG 10, so you'll see that edit on the left side, I accidentally left out the number, so 10 on reducing inequalities, and SDG 14 on life below water. So those are all the relevant SDGs which this forum relates to.
Okay, I think the national organization technical comment.
Yeah, they pointed out that the International Bill of Human Rights doesn't particularly make sense there, so we actually corrected that and made that the UN Guiding Principles on Business Human Rights and ILO Tripartite Declaration Principles concerning multinational enterprises and social policy. So it's just to make clear the references relevant to that paragraph.
Okay, we can continue. 6. So this is input on the consistencies.
Yeah, and we swapped the order on the left to make that consistent. But no substantive changes. And this is a paragraph where we previously incorporated contributions from workers and employers in terms of recognizing diversity of practices in the region.
Okay, number 7. Number 7, there is no change. No either. So number 8. So number 8, as we see,
Yeah, it's
the same with
it's the same as before. Yeah, I'm just changing orders to make sure it all makes sense.
Nine, there is no change. Number 10 is also the consistencies.
Yeah, and we fixed the grammatical error last night.
Okay, go to the paragraph 11. It's changing declaration to resolution. 12, definitions. Editorial. Number 4 is the inputs from the national organization. The definition of migration. Okay, you can go. Okay. Stop again. I think there is no change. 5, change in 7. No change in number 8. Also no change in number 9, 10, 11. Okay, go to the mandate.
On the left-hand side, we just again did the word or the change for consistency, but otherwise there's no change to that paragraph.
Number 14, there's no change. 5.
So this change, we just clarified, previous version had a reference to identification of victims and victim assistance, including to abandoned fishers. The international organizations and technical advisors during their comment mentioned the need for a definition of migrant fishers and also mentioned the lack of clarity when you just say abandoned fishers. So to make that clearer and to make this consistent with the definition of migrant fishers, we've just added some words around this to explain that we mean migrant fishers who are abandoning a state of which he or she is not a national. And this is an issue that's come up a couple of times in the last few days, and so this particular objective captures that.
Okay, number 6, number 7 is input from the association group.
So the technical advisors on Tuesday commented that we needed sort of a clearer understanding of what access to justice for fishers might be and what complaint mechanisms might be. Instead of trying to capture all the different various interpretation of that, we've added the word meaningful to basically English. We've kept the rest of the language the same, and the workers asked for the inclusion of efforts to strengthen mutual legal assistance among governments, which was also included, which I think just clarifies or indicates what we can do in order to achieve this objective.
Okay, continue to number 8. There's an input to put in, well, some editorial. So, protocol to the Forced Labor Convention. Also, this is a worker side with addition from the international organization. Okay, we go to number 15, the structure. I think there's no change. Number 16, memberships, no change, same. 17 is also the same. 18 also same. Technical advisors, no change. Steering committee. Okay.
So this is the one substantive change in this. So we previously had agreed to a 3-3. You might remember that steering group. Let me go back to the beginning. On Monday, we had a proposal of a steering committee structure that was 3-2. After discussions, all of the groups agreed that we wanted more equal representation of steering committee members. So 3-3-3, 3 national government authorities, 3 representative workers, 3 representative employers. On Tuesday night, there was a proposal for more even representation, even among the chairs of the steering committee. Previously, we had 2 co-chairs of the steering committee from the national governments and 1 vice chair each from the social partners. So 1 from the workers and one from the employers. After further negotiations yesterday and this morning, it's now agreed that the chair representation among the steering committee should also be as even as possible to reflect the multi-stakeholder nature of this and the equal partnership principles underlying this. So now we have one chair of the committee representing the government and one vice chair from workers and one vice chair from employers.
Okay, can we move to number 27? There is no change. Number 28, so no change. 29, still the same. 30, it's also no change. We go to the secretariat. 31, 32, 33, and 34, I think there is no change. And working groups, this is number 36. 37, also no change. 38, same. 39, and 40. 41, so no change. 42, there is some else. Number 43 is no change. 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. There is employers.
So on Tuesday, the employers wanted to remove voting rights for technical advisors in working groups. We have not had any push to the contrary from the other groups, so we made those changes. So previously, technical advisors could not vote in plenary, but could vote within the working groups that they are advising. Now, in this version, due to the edits in 49 and paragraph 50, that is now removed.
Change. Change there. 52, so no change. 53, 56, no change. 57, and 58. Yeah, it's no change. Still have the annexes.
Can we just check that there are no objections to accepting these changes?
Everybody agree with this? No objection? Okay, yes, move. Okay, move to the annexes now.
Because the most substantive changes were in Annex 4, we're just going to look at those first.
This is
The working group.
is it the clean one?
On the right is these are the clean ones. So the track, we didn't track them because they were quite minor. But let me just. Sorry, track.
is the annex QR working group.
This reflects the changes the working groups requested on Tuesday.
Okay. As I was in the this working group, and I'll say that there is no change in that working. There's an additional in the objective. I think we can do the second. There is some inputs in the objectives. Discussion.
So there was a request for objective 1, developing a common standard of practice in relation to the exercise of port control exercise, to reference explicitly the ILO guidelines for port state control officers carrying out inspections under C188. So we just incorporated that into objective 1. In objective 2, the proposal was to change the phrase protocol for common practices. This presumably reflects that we want to be action-driven and not constantly drafting protocols, so we have fed that in. In objective 3, there was a proposal to include develop mechanisms and operational tools. We thought that was fine and clarified, so we also included that. And finally, because this is the working group dealing with port state control, there was a request to include a reference to FAO's agreement on port state measures and other relevant instruments, because we know there are other relevant instruments in relation to port state control, just not necessarily specifically related to fishing vessels. So we have also adopted that proposal.
Okay, we can move to the working group 3. There are some changes, discussions in the support force and the development international instruments for the fishing and seafood sectors, and also adding an objective taking into account the outcomes of the workshop mission of decent Southeast Asia.
So these changes make the objectives of Working Group 3 more consistent overall with the terms of reference of the Sea Forum for Fishers. So the phrasing you see in Objective 1 there is very similar to the terms of reference we heard earlier. And also because while C188 is relevant to all areas of work under the regional coordination body, it's particularly relevant and particularly important in this working group on harmonization of labor standards. And because we are convening the second workshop together, we wanted to make a particular reference to the outcomes of the workshop, which you all just discussed in the last hour, so that we can, in the work plans of this particular working group, adopt action points that arise under the conclusions on workshop on promotion of decent work and feed that into the working plans for this particular work.
I think it's quite clear now, no objection. We can move to the working group 4. Just the inputs. So adding in the objective 1 is adding the convention 188. And objective 2, we have the national, sub-regional or regional levels. And in objective 3 and 4 there is no change. In objective 5, it's a working model for minimum standards. And objective 6 is also also models for training. That is the input from the discussion.
We thought these changes were pertinent and productive because these reflect both the fact that C188 is important to recruitment and placement for fishers, but also the action-oriented and practical nature of what we're trying to achieve. So not just guidance, but a working model, and not just training standards, but different models that can be used and implemented. So a little bit of piloting, I think, might go on under this working group.
Okay, let's move to working group 5. Working group. So there is a changes here in the naming of the working group. Increasing access to remedy for survivors and victims of trafficking, fishing, and seafood industry. Also, there is an input there in the objective 3, which is coordinate and improve access to legal advice and assistance for survivors in relation to seeking compensation. Can you?
So in this working group, we were reminded that we were perhaps a little optimistic in referring to only survivors, and that there are victims of trafficking who don't survive. And so we have now reflected this in the title of the working group to include victims as well as survivors. We have also, there was a comment during discussions that while increasing compensations is one aspect of access to remedies, we want to improve general access to remedies for survivors and victims. And the final edit on that is to emphasize access to both legal advice and assistance, because we know that this has been an area of difficulty for victims and survivors. So not just advice, but assistance to navigate complex judicial systems or other grievance mechanisms.
Okay, we're going to wrap this TOR for working group.
If there are no objections, we will accept the track changes and finalize them and fix any editorial errors and have them online as soon as we can.
Okay, I think that's a wrap for the TOR for the working group. Okay, this is Annex 3.
The changes to Annex 3 refers to the reflects the changes in the terms of reference on the relevant paragraphs on the steering committee. Again, this now reflects the 3-3-3 formula of the steering committee and the chair, vice chair structure. And you'll see that in this case, we have Indonesia Coordinating Ministry of Maritime Affairs proposed as the chair, with Thailand's Fishers' Rights Network as a vice chair representing workers, and the Philippines Employers Confederation of the Philippines representing employers. Many of these people are already known to you. They are here and they were very active and have participated in the drafting committees as well as acted as rapporteurs. So we'd like to propose this particular structure for steering committee and chairs. And if there are no objections, we will move to adopt.
May I flag that this coordinating Ministry of Maritime Affairs.
Very sorry. Now reflected on the left side. I apologize.
Okay, objection. So I think we can wrap this up.
Thank you. I
Thank
think
you.
we should congratulate the chairs.
Just kidding.
Not funny.
Okay, this is the professional list of technical advisors to be finalized at the inaugural.
You have met many of these technical advisors already. They have been here over the last 4 days to help us to think through some of the complicated issues, to guide us in our discussions, and to generally contribute to really our understanding and our work. So we wanted to thank them first of all, but also to propose that they remain as technical advisors for the first phase of the Sea Forum for Fisheries. We do have other technical advisors that may be added to this list pending confirmation. Some of them could not be here during this conference for various reasons, but have expressed an interest. We will, if there are additions to this list, we will circulate prior to the inaugural plenary meeting in 2019.
Okay. Wrap this one too. There's no objection. Ready? Okay. I think that is all for the Sea Forum for Fishers. Thank you very much. And now we'll, yeah. Oh, sorry. Next one.
We're not good at counting.
Okay.
This has been a recurring problem.
Yes.
Okay. I think I have it on my side. Sorry, so if
Look
you
at
go
the
to
left
the
side,
left
yeah.
side, sorry, we did not manage to get this up. So we have basically put everybody who's here on this list, and we have said that this is a provisional membership to be finalized at the inaugural plenary meeting. This is to take into account that some governments will require national approval processes, and that language is already captured in the resolutions that we discussed earlier. So everyone should be now on this, I hope. If you are not, please let us know. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, according to our scholar piece, to have a lead. Yes. Number two, we don't have Ministry of Home Affairs.
Okay.
We have Ministry of Interior.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And
Change has been
number
reflected there.
three,
Yeah.
not National Police, but I come from National Committee for Counter Trafficking, NCCT. NCCT.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay,
for
thank
the
you.
correction, and we apologize for the error.
Philippines. Department of Labor.
Can we remove that? Simply put Philippines.
Okay.
Yeah. We can also
Can we, for the Philippines, can we include the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources as a very critical agency for the fisheries sector?
Sorry, which one?
Bureau of
BIFA.
Fisheries
BIFA.
and Aquatic Resources.
Okay. And also Department of Justice.
Department of Justice.
So, okay. Well, actually, we invite them, and we only count one represent here. But if you suggest them to be put in there, I will.
We
Yeah.
will suggest.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would like to suggest for some correction from Myanmar.
Yes.
Okay.
That should be Ministry of Labor and Migration and Population. No more employment.
Oh, no more employment assistance. Okay. Yes, Indonesia.
From Indonesia. Number 9, I think Maritime Security Agency of Indonesia.
From Indonesia, number 9, Maritime Security Agency of Indonesia, or Indonesian Maritime Security Agency, not Kashgar. Pak Kamla oke, Pak Kamla. Kashgarnya yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other? Where are you? Oh, okay.
Department of Fisheries, Ministry of Human Resources.
Philippines on number 19, that's supposed to be Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. And then can you add one more, the Maritime Industry Authority? Maritime Industry. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, number 13, number 13, Royal Malaysian Police main operation force. I think they'll do away with the main operation force because it is part and parcel of the Royal Malaysian Police.
Okay. This Royal Police.
Excuse me, number I Chelsea again, I suggest to slap. After that, I am an hospital coordinating center or timing.
Thailand Maritime Enforcement Coordinating Center. Thai MECC. Yeah, Thai MECC. Is it? Yeah. Oh, center. Well, that's the English pronunciation. Center with ER, not RE. Yes, we can do it. It's okay. Yeah. Number? Yeah,
Cambodia.
Cambodia.
I should check with the stakeholders. This one is the Ministry of Agriculture, Fishery Administration.
Okay, me additional for the coordinating ministry of for maritime affairs. Yes.
I also want to propose for Thailand.
Yeah.
The Ministry of Social Development and Human Security.
Yes. Yeah. Is the from the Thai government putting it? Yeah, yeah. Yes, for the Philippines. Yeah. Marina, Coast Guard. Yeah, Coast Guard. Philippine government okay with that? Yeah. Philippines. Yes. Yeah. So basically, many of these we are in fight. Like for example, this is example for the Malaysia Ministry of Human Resource. We didn't fight, but because they have this event, they cannot attend here. They have to host the Asian Labor Ministerial meeting. And yeah, I mean, all this has been identified, and I think we have to move on because of the time. I mean, we have already identified most of the ministry here.
I just wanted to say that thank you very much for those additions. It's very nice when particular government counterparts are nominating their other counterparts saying you should join us. We did invite many of these, so for one reason or another, some of them couldn't join or couldn't join at the last minute. But this is very helpful that you think they should be here, and we will make a renewed effort to extend invitations. But it will also help us if you can tell your counterparts about this and brief them, and then we will also follow up. Thank you. We just want to quickly move to the list for workers' representation, and then also employers, and then we will wrap up this part of the proceedings. So the workers are all here, and if there are any changes, please let us know.
SPMI belum. KPPI. KPPI. SPPI. Sorry from Indonesia.
Questions for the employers from Cambodia, could you go? Okay, and please add one more because I'm here.
Sorry.
Okay. Association of Cambodia Recruitment Agency. Yeah. Recruitment agencies. And appearances, they can say ACRA. SEOI. Yeah. Okay, thanks for that.
Can for the workers' labor side of the Philippines, can you add one? Trade Union Congress of the Philippines.
Indonesia.
For Indonesia, on the employer side,
Serikat Buruh Migran Indonesia. Indonesian, the Union of Indonesian Migrant Workers. Apa tadi sampainya Pak?
KPPI.
Apa tadi?
KPPI.
KPPI.
on Indonesia for the employer side, it's the the
SPPI.
Employers Association of Indonesia, not entrepreneurs. So it's the Employers Association of Indonesia. And you can delete number 8.
For the Philippines, can we add the alliance? Alliance of Fishing Federation.
Ini bahasa Inggrisnya apa ya?
Sama.
Oh ini employer ya?
For number 10,
Ini SPPI, Serikat Pekerja.
Sorry, can you repeat that last addition?
Safai, Allied Industries Incorporated.
Oh ini saya tahu Pak, ini nggak tahu.
can we remove also
Harus boleh sih.
Okay. I think we can wrap this one. Yes, Pak Idris.
Number 6
Of which,
of the workers. The correct one is Confederation All Indonesia Trade Union, CAITU. Confederation All Indonesia Trade Union,
Ya.
CAITU. Because we have 16 confederation and 116 federation. We are the largest in the world. Thank you.
Tambahan dari
okay, this is a provisional list and we can add to it as we go. And we will confirm it as well. We hope that everyone on this list and everyone you have suggested who is not here will be active participants of this forum, and we look forward to engaging with them all. And if there's no more urgent additions at this point, I would move to adoption so that we can move forward with the proceedings.
ditambahkan ada beberapa serikat buruh yang lainnya, misalnya pertama Kesatuan Pelaut Perikanan Indonesia KPPI, yang kedua itu Serikat Pekerja Perikanan Indonesia, yang ketiga itu Asosiasi Tuna Longline Indonesia.
Iya Pak. Jadi ya.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
translate that and then
yeah.
you can respond in English.
Ya. So jadi Pak, kita memang sudah mengundang, tapi ini
Oh,
kita
ya.
mendasarkan kepada yang pertama yang hadir di sini dulu.
Ya.
Tapi kita sudah mengundang KPPI, Pak Sulistianto, juga SPPI, juga ini cuma mereka memang berhalangan hadir, dan makanya judulnya di atas adalah profesional, sehingga mereka memang akan ditambahkan ke dalam dokumen-dokumen ini. Demikian Pak.
Sip.
So I just say okay, already I have translation.
Some of us didn't have our earphones with me, so
Oh,
if you
okay.
can.
Yeah, so I just explained that we already invite most of the people who are suggested, but for some reason they said that maybe they couldn't attend, I think because of other businesses. But this is the professional list until the inaugural. So the original member is still, we can still add it there. Okay? Okay. Thank you very much. We can have this. And do you have anything more to say? Okay.
Absolutely.
And